Hello friends, and welcome to Painting Gems with Grimdorg. Are you a filthy Xenos player, drowning in gemstones and don't know where to start? Well, this is the tutorial for you. I'm going to share this quick and easy tutorial to painting gemstones, what like this one I got right here. Come on, grab your brushes and paints and let's begin.
Alright, so I've decided to do purple because why not? And also it always looks good. So what I'm using for this is, so obviously it's over a black base. We're going to use some Sirius purple. Now you can, if you want to, just mix this with your black and your white and kind of, make the different shades. You'll generally get a better result if rather than adding white to your kind of chosen color, you actually get a slightly lighter shade as well to do those kind of lighter tones. So I'm using Cacophony purple for those sort of slightly brighter shades, and then a little bit of Corvus black for the first layer, and White Scar. So if you've got the starter box, you can use Abaddon Black and what is it, Corax White or whatever. I just personally prefer these two shades, so that's the only reason I'm using them. Right, so what we're going to do, rather than jump into this shade, right, the pure Sirius purple, I'm going to mix it with a little bit of black. Now, my gems aren't the best, but I do get a lot of comments on them, and I think a big part of that is kind of how rich they sort of look, and I think the trick to that is to go with quite a dark base, like not quite black. A lot of people kind of use black undertones, but I think if it's a really dark version of the color that you want, going to a very, very bright color, I just think they pop that much more. So what we're going to do is, just to start off, we're going to do quite a thin, so you don't want to lose control of it, so dab it off first and just get a little bit on your brush. So obviously over the black primer it's going to be quite dark anyway, and you'll need a couple of, well, at least a couple of coats of this, just to make sure it's nice and even. You might need a third coat depending on how thin your paint is and how smooth you want it to get. Now, one thing to add is that as far as gemstones go, this is larger, right? This isn't particularly small gemstone. You can kind of scale this down to smaller sizes, but obviously the bigger the gemstone, the more detail you want to be. Now, I'm all about the quick and dirty. Anyone that's watched my stuff will know that, but it's less about speed and more about efficiency, right? This isn't necessarily the best way to do a gemstone. At the end of the day, like, you're not going to be looking that hard, and if it's for sort of tabletop stuff, this is really, really going to look better than 99% of the gems out there for actually really not very much time investment, and that's what it's kind of all about, really. Alright, the fun bit. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of this paler shade in with some of the Sirius purple. Otherwise I'm not sure there's going to be enough contrast for this, but you don't want there to be that much contrast with this first little bit anyway. Certainly not on a bigger gemstone anyway. Alright, now what we're aiming to do is, like, over about a third of it, we're going to do like a little Nike tick shape. You don't want any paint to hit the middle, because, like, the way light physics work and stuff like that on a curved surface like this, you're never going to have it right in the middle, right? We want to kind of think about what angle the light's going to hit, and for this we're going to pretend that the light's coming down at this angle. So it's going to shine in at this top left corner here, and then sort of disperse through the gem out here, right? And this is where all the colour's going to be. So you don't, if you see where your kind of halfway point is, you don't want it to quite hit the halfway point. And we're doing like a little Nike tick shape, like so. Now, one thing that really improved my gemstones is it was a little pointer that someone gave me about not letting these little shapes hit the edge. You always want to leave like a little border of the darkest colour around the outside, and it really does help it to, it really helps to sell the effect. So there's your little Nike tick, and then we want a nice little splodge in the top left. So I'm going to move to a slightly smaller brush now, just for a little bit better control. Obviously, if you're doing smaller gems, you're going to want to just use a small brush anyway. One tip regarding brushes is to not go too small, not into like your what's it called, like insane detail and small detail brushes and stuff like that. I find that especially when you get to the final bits, like putting the little last bits of white on, the paint dries too fast for you to get it down smoothly. So you want a brush that's not too small, but that's just got a nice sharp point on it, right? And that's going to give you the best possible control. Right, so now we're moving to this mid shade now. So within the shape that's there, you're going to follow those same lines. So exactly the same shape, smaller area. Simple. In a minute, we're going to do something that's really going to help the overall illusion of it. So it doesn't need to be perfect, and obviously you're scrutinizing it. So you're going to be your own worst critic anyway. Little splodge, top left, and now we'll start mixing a little bit of white in here. Should really thin this down a little bit more, but who cares? Now, like I said, we're not using any like proper glazing techniques with this. So the transition's not going to be all that smooth, but one thing that will really help the transition and help those colours to pop is if you find a wash, right? A shade that's kind of tonal to the colour of the gems that you're doing, and just put a coat of that over the top at this stage. It really does sell it. It does a lot to blend the colours together. So in this case, for purple gems, I'm going to use Druchii Violet, and you'll see that it just helps to it just helps to blend those transitions, and it will make the purples just a tiny bit richer. Now, be careful with your brush strokes, because you don't want to leave any sort of blobs of purple in the wrong place. So just wick up any excess afterwards, and see how that really kind of helps to blend the different layers together a little bit. In fairness, I probably should have had a shade that's like slightly closer to these two, but it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's still going to look great, so who cares? Now, when it comes to doing your final little bits of pure white, or if you want to like just off-white or really pale lilac, but if you're mixing kind of in any bits of white, thin it down with a little bit of Lahmian medium if you've got it, and it will stop it from being, that's probably a bit too much, it will stop it from being quite so chalky. So yeah, so that's like kind of just off white. It'll go on a little bit smoother, especially if you're using a really small brush, and again, like it's drying out a bit before you get it onto the gem. Right. And we need just the tiniest sliver. A little dot. Now, like I say, I got into it a bit with this guy on Reddit, who's a phenomenal painter, really, really good. And he was questioning the use, in a relatively dickish manner, of gloss varnish over the top. And like I say, right, if you're spending ages and ages glazing this gem and getting really, really creamy, smooth transitions between all the different colours, then you don't need it, because what you're doing essentially is like, just like with something like non-metallic metal, you're creating the illusion of light bouncing through this. So you don't need the varnish, right? Because you don't need the light to be really bouncing off it, right? You're doing that with the paint. You can see from this distance, that looks really, really good, right? It's not really a necessity. But I personally find it looks better just slightly glossier than the rest of the paint job. Do what you want to do, because at the end of the day, who cares? Like, you're the only person that you're trying to please, so it doesn't really matter. But I recommend it. I do it. Yes, sometimes if you've got a strong light source bouncing off the varnish at the wrong angle, it's going to make the gem look a little bit weird. But for the most part, that's not going to happen. So I think it adds something to it and just helps to sell the effect of like a really sort of highly polished gemstone. So that's what I do. And there you go. So you'll see, like, if you've got a strong light source, right, it's going to bounce off it in the wrong place. But again, this is not, if you're a competitive painter, then you're not going to do a gemstone in 5 minutes, right? You're going to spend a long time on a gemstone making it look perfect. I don't care about my gemstones looking perfect. I just want them to look good, right? Good on the tabletop is all I'm after. So that's the way I do it. If I wasn't nattering away, I'd get it done in, probably less than 5 minutes. So that's it. That's me. If you like it, then awesome, use it. If not, then you do you. I don't mind. There's no right or wrong way of doing it. This is just a way that I find works for me. I get quite a lot of comments on my gemstones, so I'm passing it on. So yeah, that's it. Rock and roll. I'm done.
There you have it. Now you can paint gemstones. This method, I think, is like the quickest way to a good gemstone, like in balance, right? Hopefully it was helpful. As with most of my tutorials, right, I'm not a very good painter, right? I've learned a few tricks along the way, but hopefully this gives you a starting point to build from, I think these gems are going to be like perfectly good for 99% of you out there who like have never painted one before, and you don't want to like embarrass yourself by screwing it up. Well, this is dead easy. You can crack through it in 5 minutes, and actually they're going to look pretty good, especially on the tabletop when you're not up close to them. So I hope it was helpful. If this was helpful, then please like and comment and subscribe and all that lovely stuff, because it really, really does help me out. And if you've got buddies who are filthy Xenos players as well, then share it with them, and hopefully they can benefit, and then you can have little like gemstone competitions and all that. If you don't like girls. Thanks for joining me on this journey into painting gemstones with me, Grimdork. Bye bye.